Hello. All right, so here we are again. You're here on Odyssey Hour. I'm on a Nimitz. No, you're not seeing a clown. Although, I'm thinking I need to revamp this costume if I want to go out for Halloween, huh? Just so I don't get shot. Okay, I just want to give you guys a heads up that I'm going to be pausing deliberately again. I'm going to be repeating things if I don't quite like how it turns out the first time, just because I still feel like I'm in a testing phase with this whole project. But I want to welcome you. This platform, BidChat, is designed to be a charitable platform. So every time you call in to bid, a portion of your bid is going to go to a very worthy cause. So thank you for joining me tonight. If you, okay, starting over. If you can't catch me every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, I will be uploading these videos to YouTube. So I'd love to see you there in the comment section. Especially want to hear your comments on what I talk about tonight. And my mission tonight is to explore the presidential debate round 2. I know, it hasn't happened yet, but it's coming up. And after watching the first debate and the build up to that, a few of my observations are thusly, these are my observations, that, you know, a lot of different people weighing in about, you know, what we need to be looking out for in regard to the performance of candidates during the debate. And it's had me thinking, you know, how do I see it? How do I view this entire process? And Odyssey Hour, I feel I'm creating, in the process of creating, to be a place where we can process together all of this absurd information that's coming at us, because I don't think that we really have an opportunity to talk about it all the time at a deeper level. So this is the place where I'd like to accomplish that. So some of my thoughts include, well, the main thought really is that, you know, what would happen if we viewed the entire presidential campaign as an interview process? I mean, think about it. These two candidates are basically vying to be hired by us, the American people, to the highest office in the nation, right? So as a job coach, as someone who routinely works with clientele to prepare them to interview successfully, I find a lot of parallels within the processes that I go through and my clients go through to basically what we should be looking out for during each of these debates. If we really look at it closely, we can see that these candidates not only have the entire campaign to basically demonstrate their qualifications, but these formal debates that are held with our attention trained on them, right? So we, as the audience, are the interviewers. I know some might make the argument that the elections are rigged. You know, it's really the Electoral College that decides who the president becomes. And my thoughts there are, okay, so why is everyone up in arms then? Why does each side think that their vote matters at all? Why are people trying to convince each other to vote for a certain candidate if really we don't have influence on the final decision? I'm going to go out on a limb and say we have tremendous amounts of influence. Everything we say, all of the conversations that we have leading up to and after the debates are taking place for a reason, because we recognize how much influence that we have, right? So it really has me thinking about the dynamics behind the entire process. And aside from influence, it comes down to power plays, like power dynamics, right? Interesting thing, before I started my broadcast, I was rewatching a TED Talk by Amy Cutie. I'm gonna go with Cuddy, but she's this social psychologist who studies nonverbal cues and the hormones associated with our body language. So her research focuses on weather, faking it till we make it, and the postures that we take on actually influence the way that we feel and how our body chemically reacts to certain situations. And so I'd like to touch on that here and there while we're talking about the parallels between the interview process and what we see unfolding in the debates. So from my perspective, and I usually try to teach my clients or guide my clients from the perspective of the employer. So if I do mock interviews with them, if I give them any recommendations on how to fill out an application. Hi, viewers. Welcome. If I give these pointers to my clients, I'm doing it from the perspective of an employer. So I'm thinking about, hey, what's in it for me, right? How are you going to bring value to my organization? What are your communication skills? Are they up to par? Do you have the right attitude? Do you have an upbeat attitude? Are you going to be a cultural fit for my organization? So all of these things are going through my mind, and this is the filter that I'm using to evaluate prospective job seekers, right? So if we were to apply these same standards to the candidates, and I'm really trying hard, I don't know if you can tell, to not have an opinion about either of these candidates. And really just present the information to you and, for your consideration, to see if that's a filter that we can agree on to assess the candidates and how they perform during this interview. So I think number one in the evaluation of a candidate is assessing their interests and their passion, right? From the beginning of the process, even before interviews are set up, when you go pick up an application or hand in your resume, there are going to be people sizing you up as you move through the process. They're going to be viewing your mannerisms. They're going to get a sense of how you carry yourself. Are you a confident person? Are you an arrogant person? Are you really shy and nervous, and do you lack, some social skills? These are going to be things that people are going to be looking out for. Even receptionists, at any given business are going to be weighing in with their opinion on how you act while you fill out the application, when you hand it in, how long it takes you to hand it in. And they're going to report that back to the hiring managers most of the time. So you have quite a few people who make up your audience that you might not be aware of. So that's one thing to keep in mind, just as a prospective job seeker. And are you expressing interest or passion in the position? Do you just kind of seem, oh, who cares? I need a job, any job. give me a job? Are you putting out a desperate vibe? Or are you really genuinely showing interest in serving the employer's needs, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. And, that's one thing that we want to hold our presidential candidates up to. And we want to keep in mind that in current modern society, whatever you want to call it, there's some lack of agreement about these values, right? So what someone might perceive as passionate about one of the candidates, other people might refer to as unhinged. Or if we don't see passion in another candidate, we might mistake that for being, pedantic or boring. So that, kind of makes me wonder, what's our goal as the employer? Who are we as an agency, as a nation, right? Are we a corporation? I mean, do we agree on that definition of who we are? I'd definitely like to explore, just the disagreement of values that's going on in America right now in a future broadcast, because that, I think, is central to how we talk to each other. But getting back to displaying interest and eagerness, it also makes me wonder, what are this person's motivation for wanting to be in this position? My general feeling is that, hey, we should be pretty grateful that anybody wants to take up this position. It's not obviously an easy status or person to be in our society. Obviously, we've seen a real decline in the respect shown to this office from what I can recall back to the days of the Bush administration. But we talked about that a little bit in my last broadcast about respect in our communication. And do we really show that to the office of the presidency? Where's our gratitude for actually having people who are going to step up to the plate and take up this gauntlet and really, do what they can to move our nation forward, right? But then again, that circles back to what are their motivations? What is this person's ambition? Why do they want to take up this office? From my perspective, as the employer in this scenario, I would want to choose someone who has a genuine interest in serving our country. Being of service, I equate that with leadership, strong leadership, someone who gets in the trenches with their workers and basically goes through the experiences, or at least has some compassion toward what other people are going through within the company, within the agency, and want to move the mission forward and lead by example. So that's what I would be looking out for. Does this person have a heart for service? Does this person actually care at all? Right? And that's what I would be looking for while coaching some of my clients. Do you even care about this job? Do you even give a damn about being here right now? Because you're not showing it through how you're slouching in your chair, or how you have no questions for me. It really indicates your interest, right? If you lean forward. You know, a lot of nonverbal body language also comes into play. I was watching a video earlier today about how the format of the first debate differs from this upcoming forum style, or this second debate, which is more of a town hall style. You know, just the presence of a podium in front of someone is going to give them a center of gravity. They're going to know what their orientation is to the camera. They're going to know what their orientation is to the moderator. Whereas when you take that podium away, the person feels exposed, a little bit more vulnerable. They're going to have to gauge, you know, whether to walk around, when to walk around, how close do they get to the other candidate without it appearing combative. I really recommend you Google that video. And it basically draws a comparison to how Bush Sr. addressed a question in relation to how Bill Clinton then addressed the question. And there's, it was like a turning point. It was one of those turning points in the debate because Bill Clinton took advantage of the fact that you want to establish a rapport with the person who asked the question in the audience. He actually communicated that he cared about that person, and that made all the difference. So, you know, there's not just, does this person have the presidential look, but is this person really conscious of how they carry themselves in body, in speech, or are they not, right? So we have a lot of criteria really by which to judge the candidates in a logical, rational way that actually most of us, all of us out in society are held to these standards, right? If we depart from most of the advice that I'm going through, we stand little chance of actually being a viable candidate for whoever we're interviewing with. I kind of want to remind you all of that reality, right? If we go rogue and, you know, I mean, I'm not saying not to take risks in interviews because sometimes it can pay off, but if we go rogue and are completely rebellious to the standard expectations of an employer, I can I can reasonably predict that you're not going to get very far, you know, in society taking that stance. So if you were to show up not caring about your hygiene, not caring about how you looked, you know, acting really super disinterested and not caring what direction the interview goes in, yeah, they're not going to care about you either, right? So really a lot to be conscious of while we interview. That's why we feel pressure. That's why we feel nervous. And going back to that TED Talk that I referred to, and I'll post that on my Facebook page just so you have a point of reference. It's a great TED Talk to watch. So Amy, that social psychologist, basically says that before we go into an interview, if we strike like some powerful poses, like she referred to this one as the Wonder Woman pose, or if we just, you know, expand ourselves, make ourselves big, and if we practice this for 2 minutes, let's say in the bathroom or at home before we drive to the interview, this is actually going to have a chemical effect on our body. And how they found this out was to, you know, do an experiment. They swabbed people's mouths before they had them strike a pose. And then they measured 2 chemicals, 2 hormones. One was testosterone and one was cortisone. And what they found, or one of their findings, was that people who measure high on testosterone, sure, they're confident, but who is more effective in doing the job? It's actually someone with a lower cortisol level after they've struck that pose. So cortisol is the stress hormone. And we want to choose someone as a leader who actually is less stress reactive. So it's fine and dandy to have like a really high level of testosterone, which can make us assertive and confident, but it goes hand in hand with, hey, can we, maintain our calm? Can we maintain our composure? Do our stress levels stay pretty low when the heat turns up, right? So that's another thing that we can apply to how we evaluate these candidates. Do we want a leader who flies off the handle when they're challenged, or someone who stays pretty calm and keeps their composure? Okay, and another thing that I would evaluate my clients regarding is being a cultural fit for my company. Are you someone who I can picture, seeing in the break room and having a conversation with? I've read and heard several employers point this out as a marker for, whether they would actually hire someone, is can they picture you as part of their team? First of all, this goes back to how we define our team being America, right? I mean, it appears that we're so divided right now that it's difficult to determine whether we're even a team. It seems more like we're two opposing teams, right? So is this person going to be a cultural fit? So what does that mean? I explained what it means for the prospective job seeker in general, but what does it mean for the candidates and how they act during the debate? I think, and I'd love to hear from you. What do you think it means? Because this whole show is based on the premise that I don't have all the answers. So I'm telling you what I think I know. And if you have different opinions, or if you want to call me on stuff that I just have wrong, I'd love for you to call in. I have no background in debate. I actually talked to one of my clients who was in high school debate a few days ago, and he was teaching me all about how the objective of having a good debate is to make the opposing team's argument insolvent. So basically demonstrating that other team doesn't have enough evidence to back up their argument. So if you have any experience in debate and want to school me too, I'm totally up for that. I love learning, so I'm not afraid of being corrected. So call in whenever you want. Another thing that most employers agree is a good quality characteristic of a job candidate is to be action-oriented. How does this translate? Maybe some of you have heard of the method of answering behavioral interview questions using the STAR method. And that's basically presenting what you've done in any given situation with the STAR acronym. So the S stands for situation, the T for task. So situation or task, that's what you're going to present first. And then what is the action that you took? A stands for action. And then what was the result, right? So being action-oriented. This basically gives us a guide to judge the candidates based off of their results, their actual value that they've provided from their past experiences. So this is another way that we can evaluate the candidates' responses during the second debate. So if the candidate moves through a really fluid, concise, yet descriptive story of how, yes, we have this problem or we had this situation, and these were the actions that I took to demonstrate this, and that skill. And then the results I ended up with were this much money saved, or helping this many people to get jobs, or whatever the concern is. I mean, this is going to have the effect of really tightening up how we evaluate the candidate, and also it's going to have the effect of, hey, we're actually focusing on the issues that matter to the American people. Look at that. That might matter. I say this kind of bitterly, because I think we've really lost focus on what we want to end up with. What's the main result that we want to end up with? And that's another problem. That's a serious problem that I hope that we can figure out before Election Day. Because what are the alternatives? The first alternative is to elect someone who is going to make some real changes, work with the system that actually exists, and bring people together to work together. So a leader who inspires that. The alternative is to be anti-establishment, is to, get up in arms and have a revolution, right? And to completely challenge the existing system. So those are our choices. But again, I don't feel like we're in agreement as a country as to what we want as a result. So we need to talk about this. We have to have conversations about who we are as a country. Are we, this beacon of hope to other parts of the world, the symbol of freedom and liberty and justice, or are we a corporation? What are we, right? We have to answer that question first before we can decide who we want to, be a leader of it, whether it's symbolically or literally. Who's going to be our leader? Well, we kind of have to know what the rest of our body is first, right? We're just kind of divided and scattered right now. So if you have any thoughts about that, I'd love to know, because it leaves me confused. It leaves me upset to think about a nation in decline, basically. I mean, you've heard the saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Okay, it might hit some of your ears as cliche, but isn't it true? I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. I'm trying to make up my mind here. Another piece of criteria that we might judge a prospective job seeker or presidential candidate would be based on an upbeat attitude. Let's think about this one pretty deeply for a minute. If you were the employer and you had your interviewee come in and talk trash about their previous employer, unload on you about all of the negative experiences they've had with their coworkers, or worse, drag all of their freaking personal issues into a professional venue and just harp on that, instead of, like we just talked about, moving through that STAR method and being very pointed in communicating your value. What would you do? Would you hire that person, or would you say you're fired? You're not even hired, so no. My response would be the latter. First of all, I don't have a very high tolerance for negative people, negativity. It's one of my personal standards is I don't tolerate it for very long, because I like to persist in positivity. It's more productive. So I would not hire someone who has a pointed focus on the negative, or on the past, or on all these peripheral issues. If you can't get down to business, You're wasting my time. So I don't have time for that. I don't have time for negative people. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. However, if we decide as a nation that we do want a revolution, that we want to carry this anti-establishmentarianism forward, does it matter? Doesn't it make more sense to be negative and irritable and take issue with everything and just let things go to shit, right? Just let it fall apart so we can start over. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but those are my two lines of thought. We either work with the existing system that we have and the rules that we know how to play by, the rules that everybody else has to play by, or we suck it up and we figure it out and we figure out how we want to reinvent and go in a different direction. Those are the two options. And here's another important criteria by which to evaluate a prospective president. Honesty. Okay, yeah, the word liar is being thrown around a lot from both directions. So how do we then really measure honesty? I literally don't know the question to this in regards to the presidential candidates. But if I were looking at a prospective job seeker, this might take the scenario of someone who doesn't admit to felony convictions on their application. Okay, so let's run with that for a minute. So if you leave that off of the application, and some states are trying to get that question taken off of the application altogether so that it doesn't become a barrier. But if you leave that off of an application and the employer comes to find out that you do in fact have convictions, some of them have corporate policies to not hire felons. So they're going to let you go. No questions asked. They're not even going to consider it. They might not even give you an interview, right? I know in a lot of cases it's unfair because maybe you've changed in the meantime. There's that possibility. So there's an example of dishonesty, right? And that comes out of fear, right? Fear of rejection. So in a future episode, I'd like to talk about people who take actions out of fear versus people who take actions out of love and a place of real confidence. And if you want to, learn about that in the meantime, one of my real heroes is Anita Moorjani. She's this lady who had a near-death experience, and she's written 2 books. The first is called Dying to Be Me, and the second is called What If This Was Heaven, or What If This Were Heaven. I haven't read either of the books, but I've been sufficiently inspired by her just watching her talk during her Facebook Live episodes, or initially I first discovered her on a TV show on YouTube called London Real. So definitely take the time to look up her interview with London Real. Her name again is Anita Moorjani. So Moorjani. And it's an amazing story. And I could go on about that, but that's for a different episode. So what were we talking about? Honesty. How the hell are we going to evaluate whether either of these candidates are being honest? Don't we need to come to an agreement first on what we can tolerate together? Don't we need to have a corporate policy? And let's look at the deeper meaning of these words. Corporate. I think the root is Latin, related to corporeal, which I think means body. So the body of our existence as a nation, don't we need to be a little bit united about what we think is honest? We have too many definitions. We're giving too many passes about what this value is. We may have the same values and we just don't even know it because we have such different perspectives on what these values mean to us. They're as varied as many individuals we have in this nation. So we really freaking have to get it together. Like, decide, do we have any values that we share? We're going to be hard pressed to make decisions about what our leader is going to look like if we can't decide who we are. I've said that like maybe 50 times already. So I'm going to move on to modesty. So this was identified in a couple of the articles that I read as one of the qualities that a good, successful candidate for hire would actually possess. So what is modesty? It's basically as described in one of the articles, and I'll post the links to those articles on my Facebook page so you can have the sources. But modesty is basically talking the walk. So it's not talking a big game about what you're going to do, but quietly demonstrating that you do it, that you actually get the job done. And how do we see that? We see that in the response. What are the results? What are the results and how are they going to translate into what you're going to do for me, right? Are you going to do the same thing for me? Or are you just going to continue to do it for yourself? Do you have like an ulterior motive for getting this job so that you can increase visibility of your own brand? So you can promote yourself. This is, all you have on your mind is your career trajectory. You don't really care whether this company is a stepping stone or not. And, that brings me to transparency. We're not always going to be super transparent in an interview. Maybe we do have ulterior motives. When someone asks us, where do you see yourself in 5 years? We're not going to say, not with you, not with your ass. I don't really want to be here for that long. We're not going to say that, right? So what is real transparency? It involves diplomacy. It involves tact. You're basically going to find a happy medium between what you can offer the company and what you can gain yourself through the process. So, transparency, again, another thing that we just don't have any agreement about, right? We can't agree about who's being honest, who's the real liar, which liar do we want to hire? Hey, I just made that up, yeah. Okay, so do we really want to hire a liar? Is that what this contest is coming down to? Or are we just name calling? We talked about this in my last episode, respect. Look it up on YouTube. It's uncut. I still need to learn how to edit stuff, so I'm probably going to repost that once I do edit it, but that's a skill that I need to pick up. Oh, look, that's transparency. I just demonstrated it. I told you that I'm not capable of doing something, but I'm going to learn it. I'm going to eventually master it, and then you'll see the product when I repost it. So it's kind of along the same vein as that pretty cliche answer that we give. Hey, if I don't know the answer, I'm sure going to research and get back to you as soon as I can. That's transparency. That's also being smart. So you're still thinking about what the employer wants from you, and you're covering your own ass, right? That's what you're doing. This brings up my thought, and this is another random thought, that we have much too high of an expectation for one single person who holds the office of president. They're not going to save the world. They're not going to fix the culmination of all of the results that we've generated since we've become a nation in one term or even 2 terms. There's a lot of disagreement there too. Who causes the consequences that we end up with today? Is it the current administration or is it the previous administration? I don't know. all of you are like confusing each other. You're confusing me. You need to help me out, because right now I'm just an observer. I'm hands off, and I just want to take a look at what we're dealing with behind the scenes. What we're talking about today is how interviewing prospective job clients has a lot of parallels to what we should be looking out for when we view these presidential debates. It's going to give us a lot of information to work with and help us to make our decision. Some of you might be on the fence still about that decision. I know that most days that I'm on the fence. And let me tell you why. So as far as Hillary Clinton goes, I admire her ability to stay calm, her commitment to serving other people. I like how she appears to care about language and, appearing a rational person. Dislikes about her, I don't like how she can't just say she was wrong. If she told a story where she was under sniper fire and it turned out not to be true, why not just say, hey, I messed up, and I'm human. This goes back to what I was just talking about. These people are human. They're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. If you think one of these people is the solution to everything, you're deluding yourself. You are not in touch with reality. So let me help you out and let you know that none of these people is perfect. Okay, and then let me go back to Hillary and not being able to own up in a way that's relatable. So, she talked about how I think she was opposed to gay marriage, and then she flipped, and she didn't acknowledge the flip. She just pretended that she was never against it, right? So there's another example of why not just own up to it and say, hey, I used to be against it. My values changed a little. I got to know people, and I got to know that it wasn't such a freaking big deal. And my values changed. I changed as a person. I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. What's the big deal? People change all the time, right? Okay, now Donald Trump. What do I admire about him? I admire, normally, brutal honesty. I'd like to think that I'm a brutally honest person. And I don't see too many flaws in being unapologetically yourself. I like to be that way too. The problem comes in with him where, he doesn't, from my view, really have a command of language. And he doesn't have a command of having a positive focus. And for a businessman, he doesn't appear to have the focus of, showing us what real results look like, and, the action plan to get to those results. A lot of his energy is spent combating, drama-filled negative events that he keeps like rehashing, or the other person keeps rehashing. And that's wasted energy. Nobody gives a damn about that. Nobody gives a damn about what everyone thinks. Like, I don't know if I said that right. What I mean is, nobody gives a damn about trivia or trivial things and drama. Nobody. It's all sensationalism. Sure, we're attracted to it. It gives us something to laugh about or talk about for a few minutes, but that's not the main issue, and that should not be your focus as someone who wants to be hired as the president of the United States. Fucking get your shit together and talk about stuff we care about. right? That's my biggest issue with him. And he has presented some things that I care about. I don't think it's smart business to not challenge people and their intention toward the United States. I don't think we do a good enough job of vetting people or helping people, right? We don't do a good enough job of maybe helping people to obtain citizenship in a reasonable amount of time. Maybe we don't apply all of the knowledge that we have, all of this damn research that we're doing, what's it for, to identifying, what we can work on with the human condition to really understand. And maybe this is not something that's possible, but to really get to the intentions of people. Why are you coming to this country? Are you coming here to make it better, or are you coming here to make it implode from within? What's your purpose? What is your intent? That's the same thing that we're trying to find out during interviews, right? So why wouldn't we apply that standard to being decent citizens of the United States? I mean, I guess it's a far cry to test each other to see whether we're quality individuals when we're not even paying attention to the real criteria that would help us to determine whether the people who are running for president are quality individuals, right? We can't even determine that at this point. Where Donald Trump goes wrong is that he alienates people. He basically dehumanizes them based off of their appearance, right? Not giving you the chance to do that to me, Donnie. You could put me in the clown club, but you're right there with me. He that's what this costume is. This is rebellion, and this is a satire. This is a parody of the human condition. I don't want you to know what I look like. I don't want you to know what my skin color is. I don't want you to know what my eye color is. I don't want you to know anything about me, because I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying. That's what matters. So his focus is all fucked up. It's like, oh, who's hot? She's not. So let's not pay attention to her. Or she doesn't have the look. Or, that's the point at which I'd walk away from the conversation. If he was just a regular guy I was having a conversation with, or let's say I met him on Tinder, I'd be like, bye, Felicia. I don't give a fuck what you think, because you just dismissed me based off of one little characteristic of mine that's all external. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for people who deal on that level. So he's putting himself on that level with all of the ignorant, ridiculous, absurd statements he's made about women, minorities. I guess anyone who's not, economically well off like he is, he sure does brag about that a lot. Braggarts, they just kind of bore me. It goes back to what we were talking about, that criteria of modesty. Are you someone who your work is going to speak for you? Your actions are going to speak way more loudly than all the nonsense that's coming out of your mouth. So far, I haven't seen it, so I'm not impressed. I don't know. It's a very difficult choice, right? What are your thoughts so far, guys? I mean, do you feel like we're holding presidential candidates to the same standards that we are held up to when we go in for an interview? I mean, being hired for most of us is a life or death situation. It contributes to our survival. We're dealing with a couple of people who've been out of touch with that for a while, right? They've had a pretty secure career. They've built up empires, foundations. That's not the typical experience, right? That's not our experience. Maybe some of us are working on building up an empire. We're striving, we're struggling, we have jobs to to hold during the day to help us get there eventually. But for the most part, in reality, they're out of touch with what we experience day to day. Call in and try and combat that argument. I'd love to talk about that. I want to hear your thoughts about that. I think it's a mistake to over-identify with either of these candidates. I have the advantage of being very objective and detached when I evaluate people because I'm a self-made person. Everything I am, everything I've become, I've made, but I also understand the importance of networking and everyone who's helped me to get here. But I don't know. I guess it's on them to prove who's the most in touch with us, right? And to kind of provide you a contrast between those really excellent qualities that you'd look for in a good candidate, let me read some of the top ranked bad characteristics. So what do bad employees display? This is what they display. They take credit for other people's work. They can't or won't follow directions. They're uncooperative. They might be rude, vindictive. What else? They may act entitled or argumentative. They're a drama magnet. They have a victim complex. Arrogant, selfish, brown-nosing, snobby, defensive. So if any of our coworkers displayed this type of behavior, any combination of these things, or even one of these things consistently, they would probably be on their way out, right? So why aren't we using the same criteria? Why aren't we holding up the presidential candidates, the people who are vying for the highest office in our nation, to these standards? Just let that sink in for a moment. I'm going to go over a few of those one more time. Drama magnet. Do we have time for someone who just wants to attract drama and create problems and create turmoil? I suppose we do if we want to be anti-establishment and we want to start a revolution, right? We want to stir up the drama. So what is the media trying to do? What are these candidates trying to do, right? What's their objective? What is their true purpose and intent when they come in to interview with us? A victim complex. What do you picture? I mean, that might hit some raw nerves there, right? We're not supposed to victim shame or victim blame. But when we think about someone who demonstrates a victim complex within our midst, what comes to my mind is someone who can't let go of their hold on the past. And this may be due to trauma, right? We want to be sensitive to that and say, okay, maybe this person's been through hell and back and they have a reason to act this way. And also they need help, right? They need rehabilitative attention. They don't need us to judge them. But let's take this to mean someone who's also manipulative with their emotions or how they talk. And they always bring back the focus to a past event, not to deal with the actual root issue or the root concern, or to bring healing to it, or to get better, but for the purpose of being the center of attention, pumping up their own ego, inflating their own self-esteem, or to just stir shit up, to cause drama, to be that drama magnet, right? That is a possibility. We're so politically correct, but I think it's also a good thing to be politically correct. It's good to be diplomatic and tactful, but it's also good to be honest with ourselves, right? So what do you think about that? These are my thoughts. I don't know if anybody agrees with them. Being snobby. Okay, so that goes back to being out of touch, right? So I don't know. These are the criteria that I'm going to use when I watch the debate on October 9th. So I'm going to look to see, is this person interested? Are they passionate about serving us? Are they a cultural fit for all of us? All of us. Or just a few, right? Um, are they action oriented? Can they explain themselves in a thorough way that actually culminates in um, results that lift us up where we are? Or is it just self-serving results? They got to be able to make the connection to how it's actually going to help us and serve our needs. Because what does any employer, any corporation care about? What's the bottom line? It's what? It's money, right? So again, we have to decide whether we're a corporation or we're some other type of entity. Are we a nonprofit organization? Are we trying to, be a beacon of light and help other people? Are we somewhere in between? We need to be able to articulate that as the employer. It's a two-way process, right? This interviewing thing. Does this person who's interviewing for the presidency of the United States, are they able to maintain a positive, upbeat attitude about what direction we're heading in together? Can they reach for positivity? Can they reach for solutions versus fixating on the problem and just kind of festering there? It's the difference between being productive and moving forward and, stagnating, falling apart, going backward. What do we want to do? I guess we have to decide that too. And is this person a modest person? Do they walk the talk? Right? Well, help me decide. I can't wait to see what your comments are. Again, I'm going to post that TED Talk as well as the sources for some of the articles and some of the sources of these positive and negative characteristics on my Facebook page. And I want you to let me know what your thoughts are, because I'm going to use these to evaluate where my vote goes. Who am I going to hire to serve the American people? All right, that's all I got. Let me know what you got, guys. We need to have these conversations. I'm sick and tired of going on comment sections and seeing people name call and be generally unproductive and immature, right? We can either decide to be, the people of integrity, people of innovation, and positive characteristics, and have the world see that, or we can get lost in the sensationalism and be superficial and just kind of, I don't know, devolve into this shadow of what America could be. So I'm excited because I know that my influence matters. I know that my vote is going to count and it's going to make a difference. So I want to hear what you think about your vote. What do you think about your ability to be powerful, right? We talked about that earlier, about how faking it till you make it, how striking those power poses, whether it's this or this or this, for just 2 minutes before you enter into a high pressure situation, can boost your testosterone and lower your cortisol level and make you feel confident and powerful. I encourage you to try that, before the interview. Make yourself feel big, and it's actually going to have an effect on your internal state of being. And you'll get the full effect of that research and that talk when you view that TED Talk. But it's been a pleasure as always. I hope you join me on my mission to increase awareness and, I don't know, just see things a different way, right? A better way. You guys have a great weekend. Visit me on my Facebook page. Let me know what you think. And if you don't have the chance to do that, I again will post all of my broadcasts on my YouTube channel. And we can talk there. All right. See ya. Much love. Thank you.